You know that electric feeling when you're in the streets? The drums, the chanting, the roar that makes you feel for a few minutes or maybe an afternoon like we actually might turn this thing around. I felt it too after No Kings, and I'm really familiar with it. I felt it after Families Belong Together, after Lights for Liberty, after the Women's March. Hundreds of thousands of us chanting, not in our name. And for a weekend, it felt like the world was full of possibility. But then Monday came, and the news cycle moved on, and the same fascists keep passing bills and deporting families and stacking the courts and rolling back our rights. So I want to talk today about something that may surprise you, because it isn't flashy, it doesn't trend, and no one's going to interview you about it on MSNBC. But it is, I promise you, the most radical thing that you can do right now to fight to save democracy. It's to stay in the work and to believe, even in the quiet, that what we are actually building matters. Movements are marathons, not sprints. And sometimes the bravest thing that you can do is to continue showing up for people in need when the cameras aren't rolling and your sign is at home. Before we dive in, if you're new here, I'm Elizabeth Cronise McLaughlin. I'm a lifelong activist, a former human rights and Wall Street attorney, and for the last 15 years, I've been working with people just like you who know they are here to create generational level change. If you're interested in getting weekly support on how to make a difference where you live, make sure you hit subscribe to this channel and give us a thumbs up. If you care about building lasting change and you want to learn how to turn that protest energy into real organizing power, I want to invite you to book a free strategy call with our team inside the Ripple Effect Institute. We help leaders just like you build sustained local and national movements that actually move the needle. The link to book your free strategy call is below. So let's get into it. Protest is a rush. It gives us a sense of collective power that we rarely feel anywhere else. And it matters. It's visibility, it's solidarity, and it's release. But it's also chemically a dopamine hit. Our brains flood with a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. And then we go home and we open our phones, and the same horrors that were there the day before are still ongoing. Another ICE raid, another rollback of rights, another governor interfering with our ability to vote. And then the crash hits. And you may find yourself asking, what am I supposed to do now? Too many of us mistake that post-protest crash for failure. We think that if the world didn't change immediately, maybe it never will. And maybe there's no point in the end to us actually being in the streets. But that's not how change has ever worked. And here's the secret I want to let you in on today. This real radical step that we all need to be taking right now. Movements aren't built on adrenaline. They're actually built on consistent, regular action. What we're really fighting for isn't just one bill or isn't against one administration. It's actually the long-term possibility of democracy itself. And that lives or dies in our neighborhoods, not in big crowds on the National Mall. Because here's the thing, democracy isn't a moment, it's actually a muscle. And if we don't work it on a regular basis, it atrophies. So the outcome I want for you by the end of this video is this, that you walk away knowing exactly what to do after the protest ends, that you understand how to channel that energy into consistent, local, community-based power, the kind that outlasts any administration or regime. And if you stay with me until the end, I'll show you how small strategic actions taken consistently can create ripples that genuinely move the needle in favor of justice. Part 1, the myth of the big moment. So we've been sold a lie, largely by Hollywood films that tell us a version of history that isn't actually true. We've been taught that democracy is saved in big, sweeping moments. The election night, the huge march on the National Mall, the one Supreme Court ruling. But every major win in history, from the Civil Rights Act to the end of the AIDS pandemic, to marriage equality, to effective labor laws in this country, came from years of organizing, of which we only actually saw the tip of the iceberg. Movements are slow on purpose because what we're trying to build is something durable. The protest gets us into the story, but the daily work That's what keeps the story going. And as for fascism, well, fascism counts on us losing interest. It's banking on our exhaustion. And that's why the most radical thing that you can do right now to fight for democracy isn't to shout louder. It's to stay engaged, to stay connected, and to keep building, even when others move on. Part 2, what staying actually looks like. Let's get concrete, because I know you're asking now, okay, I get the point, but how? Here's what staying looks like. It looks like joining or starting a local mutual aid group. It looks like feeding people through your local food bank. It looks like driving supplies to your immigrant neighbors who are afraid to leave the house. It's supporting bail funds to bail out protesters in front of detention camps. When the government fails and when social networks crumble, it's community that has to step in. And that, my friends, is democracy in action. This is the moment to show up at your local city council meetings to find out if your police are collaborating with ICE. This is a moment to show up at local school board meetings to make sure that organizations like Moms for Liberty aren't taking over your school curriculum to ban the truth of Black American history. This is the time to be in those rooms where decisions get made about how our kids learn and who gets housed and who gets policed. My best advice to you in this era is to do it like this. Choose 1 to 2 issues. That's it. Maybe even just one. Whether it's voter suppression or reproductive rights or access to voting, choose one issue that really calls to you and then commit to it. Learn the landscape of how it works in your city, your town, or your state. And most importantly, build relationships with those who are already doing that work. Find the local organizations where you live that are already moving the needle on the ground, that have relationships with other activists and other organizations and local officials. And then ask how you can help. And don't forget that the work doesn't stop with you. You need to invite and train others to do the work on the issues you care about. And here's a secret. Every single organizer started as someone who didn't know where to begin. So it's imperative on all of us to teach what we know, to invite others in, and to make sure that the work continues to grow. That is how power multiplies. And that's the radical part, because consistency defies fascism's favorite weapon, also known as chaos. Part 3. Why it works. Authoritarian regimes thrive on instability. They want us exhausted, reactive, cynical, and feeling like nothing that we do will matter. They want the protests to be the peak, because then we go home and often our next step is nothing. But when we show up again next week, next month, next year to the same food pantry, to the same court watch, to the same organizing cycle, to the same detention camp, we become unpredictable and therefore powerful. Consistency builds infrastructure, and infrastructure builds resilience, and resilience outlasts any regime. So here's where I want to reframe something that we've all learned from media and film. The real revolution doesn't look like what we've been taught. It looks like neighbors knowing each other's names. It looks like shared childcare during canvasses or protests. It looks like a dozen people showing up at City Hall on a Tuesday afternoon because they refuse to let silence stand. It's small, it's steady, it's strategic, and it's radical because it refuses to give up. And don't get me wrong, the No Kings protests, they've mattered a lot. They're a spark. In some instances, they got people into the streets for the first time in very long lives. But the real question is, what are we doing with that flame that's now been lit? So here's your assignment. This week, I want you to focus not on the next protest, but on what you're going to do day in and day out to bend the arc of justice. Ask yourself, where does my community need consistency and support right now? What can I sustain for 6 months, not just 6 hours? And most importantly, who can I build it with? Because democracy isn't defended by events. Democracy is defended by habits. And while it's not necessarily sexy, it is the thing that creates ripples over time that eventually become waves that change an entire society. If you need help building those habits, if you want to know how to move that high of a protest into actual action that creates societal change, that's exactly what we do inside the Ripple Effect Institute. We are a strategic incubator for leaders who may love the high of the protest, but are done with it just being about performance. We're here for people who actually want to create sustained, community-based, long-term change. And if you want to join us, you can book your free strategy call with a member of our team at the link below. Let me leave you with this. You don't have to save democracy in one weekend, but you do have to refuse to abandon it. Because every time you choose to stay in the work, every time you turn protest into practice, you keep the flame alive for all of us, and particularly for those of us who are too afraid and too vulnerable to use their voices, their bodies, and their time to effect change. I'm Elizabeth Cronise McLaughlin. Thank you so much for being here. Stay in the work, and I will see you in the next video.